And we are recording now. Alrighty. Alrighty, let's do this.
I'm ready.
All right. In 3, 2, 1. Well, hello there. Welcome to the Garlic Fries and Baseball Guys podcast, back for Giants baseball in the year 2023. It is spring, and hope springs eternal when the season starts. And this is Sam Lubman here, of the producer of the Morning Roast, and I'm here with my co-host on this podcast, Joe the Butcher Boy Shasky. You can also hear him on the Morning Roast. And Shasky, man, we did it. We got through the long, cold, wet winter. It was an up and down winter. It was not some great headlines winter, but we're here at the start of baseball season. Is hope springing eternal for you?
It really does. I mean, this is the changing of the seasons. Obviously, we here in the Bay Area have been rained out for what feels like 100 straight days. Little League has started across the country, especially here. Softball leagues, everybody's starting to plan their vacations. I can feel it. And there's just something optimistic this time around. And again, if you're listening to us for the first time, hit subscribe. You can find us and like us on anywhere you look for podcast or the Odyssey app. Garlic Fries and Baseball Guys. Sam, I'm really excited for this year. I mean, obviously, you know, the Giants had a tumultuous offseason, which we haven't had an opportunity to discuss. But it's funny how I kind of tricked myself into being almost like spring cleaning, like birth renewal. You know what I mean? I do feel like, and not to get all religious on you, I do feel like I'm rising from the dead after 3 days in the tomb.
Exactly. I think that's a great way to put it. I kind of like to look at it. It's like Schrodinger's baseball team. You know, the team could be either really good or really bad. That's what's great about this time. Until the games are played, they could be either one. Yeah. So you mentioned, we kind of talk about the tumultuous offseason, and obviously a lot has been said about that on air. We've touched on it a bit on the podcast in the past, but this was, I consider this postseason, this offseason, the Giants somehow got a little bit better, but at the same time had probably one of the most horrific off seasons that Giants fans can remember in a long time. And a lot of that falls on to the responsibility of Giants president of baseball operations, Farhan Zaidi. And that's where I want to start things off today with this pod, as we kind of start the second season of the Garlic Fries and Baseball Guys podcast. And that is where kind of things stand with Farhan Zaidi right now. Now, we do know that the Giants announced that we kind of got some details on Farhan's contract. He does have a club option for next year, which the Giants do intend to exercise. So he's basically more or less unofficially locked in through this season and next season. After that, though, it's kind of who knows. So just to start things off right now, keep it broad. Where do things stand with Farhan Zaidi, the Giants, and this fan base right now?
Man, that's such a great question. You know, I think to each person's going to have their own answer for something like this. And it really feels like, let's go to the offseason this year. We heard forever, hey, they got to land free agents. They're going to land a big free agent. They got to land a star. They got to land a star. And why is that? Well, because it felt like, and it saw to me like, when I look at the roster, nobody from the AA, AAA, single A farm was coming up in time. And so you almost feel like you had to jumpstart this kind of resurgence for the San Francisco Giants by spending top dollar on the open market. I think if we go back to 5 or 6 years ago, part of why they were in the position that they were in to hire Farhan was because of bad money that they spent, right? Locked into wrong contracts, maybe too loyal to some of the guys, going in free agency to overspend for Samardzija and Cueto, etc., Denard Span. And so I felt like they were falling down the same trap. And I'm saying to myself, well, why are you doing this? And you get the whole fan base up in a fervor. They don't land Aaron Judge. They have Carlos Correa agreed to in principle, but he doesn't get the physical approved. And then there's that whole saga. And I sit here and I look and I'm saying to myself, well, wait a minute. Like, you got $180 million payroll, and there's not one guy that anybody cares about other than Logan Webb, Doval, and Crawford. And I don't see any young players, and I don't see any stars. What's going on? So I feel like a lot of the criticism on Farhan is warranted, and it's part of their own doing.
Totally. No, they've kind of dug themselves this hole, and you kind of look back. It's like, well, how do you get to this situation?
Yes.
When Farhan got here, it's no secret he had a tough situation to kind of dig his team out of. And Yeah, I think you mentioned the lack of player development. It has come along really slow. Now, there's lots of reasons as to why that may have happened. Some of it's injuries, some of it's bad luck. Some of it is just some guys just kind of got stalled out in their development. But it kind of created the situation where the Giants were almost forced to have to build a team through free agency last year, which I don't think that's what this front office wants to do. They really want to focus on building internally and having guys from the farm system produce, but they're kind of forced to go off script here. And they're almost forced into this situation where they had no choice but to go out and sign Aaron Judge. Now, we've talked about how, forthcoming Judge was or how honest he might have been in this pursuit. You've expressed frustration that the Giants were had. You think that they shouldn't have been had. I almost kind of wonder, like, if Farhan had not pursued Aaron Judge and said, well, we wanted to, but we could tell he was not, he wasn't going to give us an honest, faith negotiation. I don't know if fans really would have accepted that as an answer. So it's almost like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. You're stuck between this rock and a hard place. That's a really difficult situation for the Giants to be in. And at the end of the day, you have no one but yourself to blame for getting into this situation.
Let's put the free agents to the side, because I'm kind of with you. Like, let's say we had never heard publicly that they were pursuing Judge. You wouldn't lose much sleep, right? I mean, most Giants fans, I think the fact that you felt like you had a chance and then you find out that you really were kind of used to up the price for the Yankees, like, that hurts. It hurts being on the other side of that. Then the Correa thing, you get all fired up because you think they finally land a guy. He's a shortstop. He's going to provide some international flair because he's not from this country and been part of some winning teams. And he's an everyday player that you're looking for. And wow, 13 years, like, so many things baked into that. Like, we can even have an argument whether 13 years is just too much to give any player. I don't care who it is. But if we had not found out about all those things and I looked up and I saw this roster, let's say I was hibernating all offseason and I just looked at the roster, it's not an inspiring roster. Although I do believe it to be upgraded from last year, my biggest problem, it's not you missing on the free agents. It's none of those things. It's the fact that you can't develop your own players, and it feels like we're waiting extra long when I was already patient on the front end saying, hey, it's going to take 3 or 4 years. Well, here we are in year 5, and there's not one young everyday player that I know can play for this team.
Yeah, and you're starting to see the fruit a little bit with Casey Schmidt.
Yeah.
Bryce Johnson could be some there as well. Obviously, the big eye is on Kyle Harrison. He looks like he could be the first big star to come out of the Giants farm system here. But yeah, to your point, Shasky, we gave him patience, and we haven't really been rewarded for it. At the end of the 2018 season, this is a line I cite a lot when I write stuff for the station about the Giants. Larry Baer said, in looking for a new president of baseball ops to replace Brian Sabean and Bobby Evans, we want next-gen thinking. And what I saw that as is it was the Giants admitting that they fell behind the times. You see what the Dodgers are doing in terms of how they've kind of dived into this new way of approaching baseball team construction. The Astros, they're at the forefront of using data and new age technology to develop their farm system. And that's how both of those teams have got a just continuous supply of young talent coming up from their minor leagues, where we can lose, the Dodgers can lose a Corey Seager. It's okay. We have Gavin Lux. The Astros can lose a Carlos Correa, and they got Jeremy Pena, who can fill in right after that. That's where I kind of saw the Giants wanted. The Giants wanted a guy who could recreate that process. But you see them instead. They're striking out with free agents. They're kind of signing ho-hum free agents. They're not developing guys. It's almost like we wanted next-gen thinking, but it's basically just a different version of what the Giants had in the last few years of the Brian Sabean area, when they were not signing free agents, when the free agent signings they did have, like, a Denard Span, weren't exciting. And the player development the last few years under Sabean was largely non-existent. It seems like the Giants are just new people, same results.
Would you agree with me? Very few teams can sustain excellence if you're just splurging in the free agent market.
I totally agree with that.
All right, so let's look at the Padres, for example, because everyone wants to point to them. Wow, look, they got Machado, and remember when they got Hosmer? And well, really, it started with some of their own homegrown talent, Musgrove, and obviously Cronenworth and Fernando Tatis Jr. I think that's really the secret sauce of that team. Will Myers was obviously homegrown at one point in his career. So, like, to me, as much as we want to go crazy, and yes, you can land superstar type talent every now and then via free agency, it's not a sustainable business model. But you know what is? Developing your own. Look at the championships that the Giants had. And I think this is my biggest problem with right now. Like Posey, Johnny Sanchez, Lincecum, Kane, Pablo Sandoval. You can find me a Hunter Pence and trade for him and bring him in and make him a part of the culture. But Hunter Pence by himself wasn't going to do anything. It was the fact that they had all those other guys around them. And then you sprinkle in the Brian Wilsons and the Sergio Romos who we're celebrating right now. Like, I think we've dramatically underrated how important having a pipeline of talent. And then you fast forward to like 2014 and 2016, you had Joe Panic emerge and Crawford emerge and Brown and Belt emerge and Matt Duffy emerge. There were so many guys that they could use some of those guys as trade pieces to get things that maybe they couldn't develop. That's the biggest issue right now. The cupboard of prospects feels very empty.
Mm-hmm. So going into this season, this feels like it's a big year for everyone in the Giants. We could touch about that again in a second, but we know that the plan is to pick up the option for Farhan after this season. So it sounds like he has at least 2 years left, and we're still waiting on whether or not he gets a longer term extension. So I'm curious for you, Shasky, has Farhan earned that extension? And if not, what needs to happen this year for you to say, maybe we should extend him?
So let's play this out. Why are you in a rush to give him an extension? Is he going to be gun shy or more apt to make a bold trade to keep his job? Are you that worried? Like, I'm asking sincerely. I don't know the answer to this.
Yeah, I think a part of it is when you have that long-term contract, there's security. You're going to be around.
Okay.
It's harder, I think, to make longer-term moves when you're not going to be around to see those moves come to fruition. If I'm Farhan and I'm thinking, well, I could be gone as soon as maybe after this year or maybe after 2024, it's kind of harder to maybe say, well, maybe we should extend Logan Webb for the next 5-6 years. Because why would you make a move like that you won't be around to really see the fruition of? So I think having that stability, I think, looks good around the rest of the league. I mean, if it's tough getting people to sign here now, how are you going to convince people to sign here when there's so much questions around the leadership of who's going to be running the team? So just off the top of my head, I think those are kind of some reasons why you want to have Farhan extended. And honestly, as a fan, if I see a contract extension for Farhan Zaidi, that's kind of an indication that, you know what, the front office, the ownership, they know more than we do. If they're saying, hey, we're comfortable giving Farhan more years, that in theory is a positive indictment on the direction of the team.
I hear you. I guess my counter to that would be, wow, one winning season and you're going to be signed up for 10 years of Farhan Zaidi? Because like that's what an extension is going to look like. It's going to be a multi-year extension. And, this is year 5. Next year would be year 6, if that's the option. If you add numbers to it, 7, 8, 9, right? Like you start doing the math and you're saying to yourself, I got to start seeing some fruit come off this tree. And so, look, I think they're in a really tough spot. I would just say, like, can I see how this year plays out? Because if I see one young player, and we can get to some of them in a second, I think a lot of things change. If this pitching staff bottoms out and isn't good, and Logan Webb doesn't regain form, and maybe Camilo Duvall doesn't take another step forward, and we don't see Kyle Harrison, and we do see Casey Schmidt stuck in AAA, like, do I really want to be signed up for more years of this? Like, I would take a hard look at my situation and say, do I have the right infrastructure in place to cultivate talent year after year? Like, I think they're in a really hard spot with this one. I can go both ways.
Yeah, it's tough because I don't know if there's any one specific answer that would kind of settle everything. It could be a season that doesn't go how we want, but still leads to an extension. There's so much behind the scenes. So just want to take a minute, let you guys know you are listening to the Garlic Fries and Baseball Guys podcast. This is Sam Loveman here with Joe Shasky. We are coming at you at least twice a week, all throughout the Giants baseball season. Make sure to rate this podcast, review it, subscribe to it, share it, tell every person you've ever met in your life to listen to it. We are the best destination for all of your Giants podcast talk right here on Garlic Fries and Baseball Guys. So we're talking about just kind of what needs to happen this season in terms to get a contract extension. And as the season gets started, there's a lot that's said about expectations. What can we expect from the team? Now, we could be optimistic right now and maybe expect the moon from the Giants.
Yeah.
Or to be pessimistic and be like, oh no, they're going to be lousy all year long. So it seems like there's a team where just looking up and down this roster, so many guys have something to prove this year. So many guys have a lot of stock kind of riding on how this season transpires. So with all that said, with what these guys on this team have to prove, considering the landscape around them in the National League West and just the National League as a whole, what's a fair expectation for what we want the Giants to do this year? Obviously, the overall expectation is you want a World Series, but if that's number one goal, what is a fair expectation? What do the Giants need to do for us coming away from this season saying that was a step forward?
Sam, saying that this team is got World Series aspirations. Look, every team in professional sports wants to win championships, but the reality is you're not set up to do it every single year. And even when you think you're set up to do it, things can happen throughout the season where sports happens, injuries, guys fall off. You get beat by a better team. You don't catch the right breaks. You face the wrong team in the wrong playoffs. I would make the argument in not one of the years that the Giants won the championship were they the top dog heading into the playoffs, right?
No.
Now, 2012, I feel like was their best top to bottom team, and they were the number one team for 3/4 of the year. But the final 2 months of the season was horrible. And then obviously 2014, Bumgarner helped will them to a championship. Well, with obviously Crawford and Posey and Pence and Belt contributing, even though Posey's bat was terrible at that time. So this year, let's look at this year. When you spend the amount of money that they've spent, even if it's a lot of 2 and 3 year contracts and 1 year deals, I feel like that puts you in the wild card at minimum. Like you need to be competing for the wild card spot. Now, if things happen and you fall out of it, look, I'm willing to understand if we go through the season and guys fall off and they're nowhere near, or injuries happen, or some other team in the NL West makes a big jump up, like Arizona, I believe is prime for that. But I've said that a few times about Arizona. Maybe Colorado comes up out of nowhere. You should be competing for that 7th wild card spot at minimum. That to me is a realistic goal for this team right now. What do you think?
I agree. No, I think at minimum, there should be a wild card. I think we can all just maybe agree right now, the Padres are probably, they have the division clinched until they don't, I guess, would probably be a good way to look at it. They just look like the most complete team from top to, still have to play the games.
Yeah.
But from top to bottom, the Padres look like the most complete team right now. I have no issue, penciling them in as the division champions, which means that you're fighting for one of these 3 wild card spots. You're going to be fighting for that spot with the Dodgers, who, even without Trey Turner, that's still a very scary team. Yeah. People think, the Dodgers are taking a step back this year. There's still a 111 team that lost Trey Turner. This is still a team that could probably win 95 games.
Yeah,
the Dodgers are still pretty freaking good. And then, the Diamondbacks, they're going to be a problem this year. They have a very good 1-2 punch with Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen atop the rotation. Oh, and of course that Madison Bumgarner guy, he's always a potential to pitch pretty well too every now and then. And the lineup, it's not a chump lineup. There's guys who can hit. Even in 2021, when the Diamondbacks were a disaster, they had guys in that lineup who could put the bat on the ball and make some damage happen. So they're not going to be a pushover. And the Rockies, they still play half their games at Coors Field, which that's always going to be a massive home field advantage for them. The Giants, they seriously have their work cut out for them just in the division. That's before you even get through the rest of the National League. The National League East looks absolutely loaded. The NL Central, you got the Cardinals and the Brewers. I think the Cubs could be a team that maybe might sneak in and cause some problems too. So that's a lot of traffic to navigate through to get one of 3 spots. You're talking about, is 87 wins enough? I definitely think that should be the goal for the Giants to, at minimum, achieve that. I'm not even sure if 87 wins would even get you there when you think about just how good some of these teams in the National League are.
I'm with you, but they've got a lot of question marks. Let's go to some of the question marks for this year's Giants team. Let's dive deep into this right now. Last year, I thought it was one of the worst base running teams I've ever seen in my life. Also, defensively, they left a lot to be desired. You can make an entire case on Alex Cobb being underrated strictly because of bad defense, right? Mm-hmm. So let's go around the diamond right now. Brandon Belt, whatever you think about him, was a better defensive first baseman than what I've seen thus far from Jock and Lamont Wade. Though, I heard from Lamont Wade, he played first base in college. He's smaller, a shorter target. I actually think he'll be better than Jock at first base, and I think we're underrating it. But defensively, they might take a tick down. I think that's fair to say out loud.
And you also got possibly Wilmer Flores and JD Davis will also see some times at first base. And
it's a crowded position.
Of those 4, is Lamont Wade Jr. the best defensive option there? And if that's the situation, like, ugh.
I know. And so, and look, I'm holding out hope he can get better as the year goes on. More familiarity, more reps, all those things. Second base. Estrada made strides last year. He was a struggle at second base at times, right? Defensively. Shortstop, we love Craw. I like Craw a lot. Who doesn't like him? But he's got a bulky knee right now. Can he continue to, face off Father Time and look like his youthful self? Who's the backup at second and at short? Like, is Estrada going to be my backup at short? Is Wilmer Flores my backup at second?
I mean, the Giants, they're falling into a trap where it's almost like it's a repeat of the 2009 Giants or the 2008 Giants when they went in with 41-year-old Omar Vizquel at shortstop and no one else. And that's how the legend of Brian Bocock was born.
Yeah, exactly.
So then it seems like the Giants are repeating that same mistake almost.
Yeah, exactly. And so I look at someone like David Villar and they've got him penciled in at third base. And I'm saying, well, I think I need him to play third and second. Like, just looking at the roster, Wilmer Flores
needs to play first too.
Exactly. And then that leads us to third base, which obviously Villar is going to get the bulk of the opportunities there. Looking around the backups, okay, you have so many first basemen, the redundancy there. You don't really have legitimate backups at third, short, and second. JD Davis doesn't cut it at third base, in my estimation. So,
and neither does really sketchy.
I'm really sketchy on the infield defense. Behind the plate, Bart looks solid. I would say solid, not great behind the plate. He's got a really plus arm. The glove is calling games. That's a whole nother thing. Blake Sabol, great bat. The glove is coming along. Like, that's just call it what it is. And then I go to the outfield, and I love Bryce Johnson being added to the team, some speed, all that. Yaz and him are the only plus defenders.
Yeah, I mean, Austin Slater, I think he's okay on defense. He can move around, but you and I saw it last year. How many times did Austin Slater jump for a fly ball that went 5 feet over his head and to the left?
I know.
The guy can't judge a fly ball at all.
No.
Mitch Haniger, I think, is a improvement over Jock Peterson in left field, only in the same way that you or I would be an improvement in left field over Jock Peterson defensively. And Michael Conforto, again, this is a guy who all indications are that he is healthy. He is ready to go. Good. I think he could be another plus defender out there. You talk about just kind of what to expect from guys. I look at Conforto and Haniger, and I think maybe what do you want to expect from them? I'll ask you that in a second. Conforto, I think, could be he could be the next guy where we're like, oh, hey, Farhan really found a good one here. Mitch Haniger, my bold take for the year is I want to see Mitch Haniger make a sneaky all-star bid. I think he could be good enough. The last full season he played, he hit 39 home runs. This is a guy who I think very well could play well enough to where he could get some all-star consideration there.
Let me ask you about Mitch Haniger. For people that maybe aren't familiar, what kind of player is he?
He's probably more power dominant. He's got some good contact there. Overall plus defender, a guy who's able to drive runs in, about a league average strikeout walk rate, kind of fits a lot of the molds that Farhan Zaidi is looking for. Now, as far as versatility, I think he's probably more of a left fielder. I don't think he'll play a lot of right field, but I think that's good because I don't think he's a guy who's going to be platooned. He can hit both sides of the plate. So he's a guy
So you're really high on him.
I'm about as high as you probably could be on a guy like him. Yeah.
All right. I like that.
I want to be very optimistic about Haniger. Part of it is just hopefully kind of willing it to happen. But no, I look at Mitch Haniger as a guy who, if he's in an all-star conversation, I wouldn't be all that shocked about it. If he's not, I probably wouldn't be shocked about it either. Not trying to hedge that or anything, but he is a guy who I kind of expect a lot out of Mitch Haniger. And that may be warranted or not, but like it or not, he was the premier signing of this offseason. So there's going to be a lot of expectations on what we should see out of him.
I'm with you on that. And then adding Bryce Johnson, this is the kind of step forward that I'm looking forward to. This is a young speedster. This is a team that doesn't steal bases. He led spring training in stolen bases. The Giants tied the A's in terms of most stolen bases attempted and most stolen bases successfully achieved. And so this is a big signaling of them changing philosophically who they are as their ethos. They were never going to run the bags the last couple of years because of how old they were, very station to station. I'm really excited to see Bryce Johnson.
Yeah. No, especially I think stolen bases are going to go up this year. Bigger bases, less pickoff attempts. It is going to be easier than it has been in a long time to steal bases. And having at least one guy there is great. Hopefully they can get more, but you need to start somewhere. So You are listening to the Garlic Fries and Baseball Guys podcast. Joe Shasky here with Sam Lubman. We are coming at you twice a week. Make sure you're rating this podcast, review, subscribe to it, share it, tweet about it, go to lunch and tell people about it. It's a great conversation starter.
Can we get into the pitching?
Yes, let's talk. Yeah, what do you want to get in with the pitching here?
Okay, let's look. Like, we all agree, like, part of the great dynasty that the Giants put together, it wasn't just the everyday players. It was the elite pitching as well. And it's not just the starting rotation with the bullpen. As I look at this, I think they're so interconnected, right? You want to work backwards. That's what they say. Well, I want to start on the front end, because to me, part of what made the Giants so great was knowing that even if Johnny Sanchez, who was your 4 or 5 at times, was going to struggle, he was going to get you through 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it made it a lot easier for Bochy and Righetti and Mark Gardner to piece together that bullpen. I look at what they have now. Of the guys that you have available, and I'll let you rattle them off, Logan Webb's the only one that I know I expect 6 full innings from him every time he's on the rubber. All the other guys, they're nice pieces. They can deal at times. I wish, because like losing Rodon in the offseason, that's a blow for your bullpen, because you're asking a lot from these other guys to step in if they have to come in the 4th, 5th, 6th inning in relief.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. And I think that's why they went with more quantity over quality in their pitching choices this offseason. Sean Manaea and Ross Stripling everyone talked about how they're very deep with the pitching rotation. You know, we saw in September last year, they had bullpen games back-to-back days, not because they wanted to, because they had to. They ran out of healthy arms that they could throw out there. I don't think they'll have that problem this year. You'll probably see guys like Jacob Junis, who was a great find last year. He's probably going to be more in the swingman long relief role for those days when, you know, maybe Alex Cobb can't get out of the 3rd inning. DeSclafani and Manaea, I think you could see them flip-flopping around in that 5 spot. Whoever's not in the 5 spot, they'll kind of be the bulk inning guy in the bullpen. So I hear what you're saying. You want starters to go deep in the games, but on those days when, you know, the starter maybe can't get into that 5th inning or can't get through that 5th inning, they have long relief options that can kind of help bridge the gap from that 4th, 5th inning through the 6th inning and into the 7th inning. So if you're kind of breaking into your bullpen with, you know, 2 outs in the 5th, 2 outs in the 6th inning or in the 7th inning, ideally, so you're kind of, you know, 3 innings of bullpen work, 3 1/3 innings of bullpen work, that's probably a very good sweet spot for this Giants team. It might be difficult to get on some nights, but I think they have enough starting pitching depth here where they might have to get creative in how they get the game to the bullpen. They certainly have the tools to do it. Whether or not it works out, that unfortunately remains to be seen. Another thing that kind of strikes me with the pitchers here, and this ties in with the defense as well, Shasky, and I'm kind of curious as to your thoughts here. I'm looking at the Giants pitchers, and I'm noticing a pattern here. Logan Webb, you know, fastball sinker combo, a lot of ground balls. Sean Manaea, got a good sinker, generates a lot of ground balls. Ross Stripling, sinker pitcher. Alex Cobb, Alex Wood. These are all guys they all have sinkers, and they all have sinkers that are great at generating ground balls. The Giants led the league the last 2 years in generating ground balls. The Giants clearly have a strategy where they want their pitchers to put the ball on the ground. I like that strategy until you realize what defense is behind them. And I just can't help but wonder, like, I like that you have a pitching strategy, but does this pitching strategy really work with the team you have here? Now, I don't know how good the defense has to be behind this pitching staff. I don't think they have to be a field of gold glovers, but they can't be a field of soccer players either. No. I'm curious, what are your thoughts when it comes to the pitching strategy compared with this defense?
I find it to be almost at odds with each other. Like, if you're going to have a team that wants to put the ball on the ground, at least in terms of your pitching staff, then why is Casey Schmidt in AAA if he's one of the best, most dynamic gloves that the team has ever seen? Like, to me, he's a guy that I would prioritize keeping up strictly to lean in to that defense. Like, it's very difficult because you have to sacrifice something a lot. Like, very few players are complete players, right? And especially in the modern baseball, you're not going to get a, plus hitter with a plus defender. That usually doesn't happen. Usually there's a deficiency somewhere. And I feel like they've made their choice, and their choice is, we want to hit the ball. We want to mash. Yeah, but you better be ready for the defensive hiccups that are going to be coming your way. And you better have pitching that can overcome that. And so I just worry about it. And I think it's all interconnected. And it goes back to the bullpen too. Like, you got a couple of guys that serve up long balls. So your relief as your ground ball pitchers for all your starting pitchers come in, guys on base, who's coming in out of the pen? Couple of guys that serve up long balls, i.e. Taylor Rogers, even though they're both very good, they do have a propensity for giving up the deep ball. Camilo Duvall, I love him. When he gives up a shot, it's a long ball. Mm-hmm. So I worry that you're going to be giving up crooked numbers in bad situations because of that philosophy. Does that make sense?
No, totally. And I agree. I mean, when you have pitchers that pitch to contact, that is a downside of it. Tyler Rogers, again, yeah, he can kind of hang one every now and then when guys get a beat on that slider. Though I think last year you only allowed like 1 or 2 home runs all last year. Of course, it's kind of tough right now because Rogers gave up a shot last night to the A's.
Yeah.
And it was just an absolute moonshot. But no, to say that about the defense, the Giants and their ground ball rate, it kind of was the same from 2021 to 2022. What did not translate from 21 to 22, obviously, was the defense. But in 21, there was not a lot of Gold Glovers around there. I mean, obviously Crawford was great on defense, but the Giants, more or less overall, they were kind of middle of the road average on defense. Last year, they were at the bottom of every single defensive metric. Pick your favorite defensive rating, UZR, defensive run saves. Pick a metric. They are in the bottom 3. They don't need to be super, super good on defense.
I agree with that.
If they're ranked anywhere from like 15th to 20th in most of these defensive metrics, like that's not ideal. I think you want to shoot for something higher than that. But I think this lineup is good and this pitching is good enough to where simply marginal improvement on defense, I think will go a long way. Is it the difference between 81 wins and 107 wins? I don't think so. Is it a difference between 81 wins and 87 and 90 wins? Play good enough defense, and it very well could be. Again, just be capable. Just be capable. And I think so far, I think they've at least gone from, if last year was a 0 on a scale of 1 to 10, I think they're at about a 4 or a 5 right now.
Interesting. We've gone so negative. I'm actually very optimistic about this year's Giants.
I know.
I know it sounds like we're pointing out a lot of their flaws, but baseball's a game of failure. I think that's kind of like one thing that people need to kind of get it through their head. Like 7 out of 10 fails and you're in the Hall of Fame. You're 300 hitter, Hall of Fame. So it sounds like we're being negative. I don't think we are. Actually, I'm surprisingly optimistic about this Giants team, and I'm really excited to see kind of how it shakes down. Like this year, I look at little things. Like if Camilo Duvall can get to 40 saves, that would be huge for this team.
Massive.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Now let's go to Logan Webb. If Logan Webb, I don't think he needs to replicate 2021. Can he get to 15 wins and regain that command on all of his breaking pitches? Can he go deeper into games with better stuff, right? And not labor so hard through those middle innings like he had in years past? Can someone emerge as a number 2? Rodon was a clear ace last year for this team, and Webb, even though he started the year as the 1, became the number 2. Who can be that number 2 to Logan Webb? On offense, can Mitch Haniger break out? Can Bryce Johnson show that he belongs? Can Estrada come somewhere close to what he did last year? Can I see more from VR? Like, I think that there are little tiny, jobs looking around the infield and the outfield and the bullpen where I'm like, I could see a lot of successes this year.
I agree. And I kind of want to finish on an optimistic note. And I do think you don't need to see a huge amount of improvement, I think, to see an overall level of improvement around this team. One thing we know about the Giants and their pitching staff and their coaching staff is that they know pitching.
Yes.
They have been great at pitching ever since they got here. They're expected to be great at pitching this year. I'm excited for bounce back seasons from Alex Wood and Alex Cobb. I think just marginally good defense will work wonders for them. Remember in 2021, Alex Wood was basically the losing streak stopper for most of the season. Cobb, you look at him, he had an ERA in the 5s. He had a fielding independent of pitching in the 3s. Now, for those who don't know how FIP works, basically the short version of it is FIP is a more indicative version of how good a pitcher is minus the fielding that goes on behind him. So it's only on what a pitcher can control. A FIP that is lower than your ERA suggests that you have some positive regression. So you were kind of screwed over by some bad luck. If your FIP is higher than your ERA, it means you're in line for some negative regression, aka you were getting a little lucky out there. Alex Cobb last year, he got bit by the bad luck bug quite a bit. I expect that to kind of regress back to the mean this year. That would be huge. So there's a lot of areas where last year I think was just kind of an anomaly in some senses in terms of just how bad the Giants were. Some of it was kind of brought on themselves. All of it, I think, is something that you'll see improvement on going into this season. And again, a little bit of improvement, I really think will go a long way with this team. Shasky, you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I do. If one player can come out of nowhere from this farm system and just provide a little bit of hope, I think we look at Farhan, Kapler, the Giants, everything differently. If it's Casey Schmidt, if it's Kyle Harrison, if it's McCrary or Patrick Bailey, like pick the player. Elliot Ramos, who I've kind of given up on, Luciano. If one of these guys can find a way up to the big league club in 2023 and just show us a couple of weeks of some optimism, doesn't everything change in terms of narrative around this team?
I definitely think it does. Just show us positive steps. Show us that we're heading in the right direction.
Exactly.
You know, Farhan once said, it's just one good baseball move after another. Let's see these positive moves and let's see them last too. If I had to make one request, on-field request, I would love to see a Logan Webb extension this year.
Okay.
Show me that, because that would show me that, you know what, we have our guy for the future.
Yeah.
We can build around him. I want to see Logan Webb be that guy. Hopefully this season we kind of start to see that happen. So for Joe Shasky, this is Sam Lubman here on the Garlic Fries and Baseball Guys podcast. We are back for the 2023 season of Giants baseball. We'll be coming at you twice a week, all season long, all your great Giants coverage here. Make sure you're subscribed and don't miss an episode. We will see you on the next one. Awesome.
That was great, Sam.
Yeah.
Post it. Let's rock and roll, baby.
Great. Yeah, I'll have it. It's going to go up tomorrow morning. So I'll work on it all tonight, and then we'll have it ready to go tomorrow.
Sounds good, buddy.
All right, man. Talk to you later.
You too. Later.